First read. Read the text and make sure you have a general understanding of the people, ideas, and events described. Annotate vocabulary that presents a challenge and use digital tools like dictionary.com to find the meaning of those words to add to your annotations. Close read. Use these questions to guide a close read. Prepare responses to these questions and answer them in the spaces provided at the end of the text on page 7. Each response should restate the question and be at least 2 sentences in length. The purpose of preparing responses is to participate in a text-based discussion. The first one is completed for you. Number 1. What does the construction and implementation of a death camp like Auschwitz say about the Nazi government? 2. There were German and Polish citizens who were not targeted by the Nazi government who were aware of the camp, although few knew how truly horrific it was. How is it possible that Auschwitz and camps like it could exist? 3. What does the lack of action on the part of non-Jewish citizens say about the conditions in Nazi-occupied Poland? What does the lack of action say about how groups of people respond to conflict in general? 4. What lessons can we learn from studying history, like the history of Auschwitz? What does being silent in the face of an unjust conflict say about bystanders, people who stand by and do nothing? 5. Why might some people stand by and watch injustice rather than stand up and speak against it? How can we help each other become upstanders rather than bystanders? It is estimated that the SS and police deported at least 1.3 million people to the Auschwitz camp complex between 1940 and 1945. Of these deportees, approximately 1.1 million people were murdered. The best estimates of the number of victims at the Auschwitz camp complex, including the killing center at Auschwitz-Birkenau between 1940 and 1945 were Jews, 1,095,000, deported to Auschwitz, 960,000 died. Non-Jewish Poles, 140 to 150,000 deported, 74,000 died. Roma, Gypsies, 23,000 deported, 21,000 died. Soviet prisoners of war, 15,000 deported and died. Other nationalities, 25,000 deported, 10,000 to 15,000 died. Auschwitz-Birkenau had the highest death rate, but also the highest survival rate of the killing centers. During the Holocaust, concentration camp prisoners received tattoos only at one location, Auschwitz. Incoming prisoners were assigned a camp serial number, which was sewn to their prison uniforms. Only those prisoners selected for work were issued serial numbers. Those prisoners sent directly to the gas chambers were not registered and received no tattoos. Auschwitz I. Auschwitz I, the main camp, was the first camp established near Auschwitz. Construction began in April 1940 in an abandoned Polish army barracks in a suburb of the city. SS authorities continuously used prisoners for forced labor to expand the camp. During the first year of the camp's existence, the SS and police cleared a zone of approximately 40 square kilometers, 15.44 square miles, as a development zone reserved for the exclusive use of the camp. The first prisoners at Auschwitz included German prisoners transferred from Sachsenhausen concentration camp in Germany, where they had been incarcerated as repeat criminal offenders, and Polish political prisoners from Lodz via Dachau concentration camp, from Tarnow in Krakow district of the General Gouvernement, the part of German-occupied Poland not annexed to Nazi Germany, linked administratively to German East Prussia or incorporated into the German-occupied Soviet Union. Like most German concentration camps, Auschwitz I was constructed for 3 purposes: to incarcerate real and perceived enemies of the Nazi regime and the German occupation authorities in Poland for an indefinite period of time, to provide a supply of forced laborers for deployment in SS-owned construction-related enterprises, and later armaments and other war-related production, to serve as a site to kill small, targeted groups of the population whose death was determined by the SS and police authorities to be essential to the security of Nazi Germany. At Auschwitz I, SS physicians carried out medical experiments in the hospital, barrack, or block 10. They conducted pseudo-scientific research on infants, twins, and dwarfs, and performed forced sterilizations and castrations of adults. The best known of these physicians was SS Captain Dr. Joseph Mengele. When we think of the crimes of Nazi doctors, what comes to mind are their cruel and sometimes fatal experiments. Yet when we turn to the Nazi doctor's role in Auschwitz, it was not the experiments that were most significant. Rather, it was his participation in the killing process. Indeed, his supervision of Auschwitz mass murder from beginning to end. Auschwitz II. Of the 3 camps established near Auschwitz, the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp had the largest total prisoner population. It was divided into 10 sections separated by electrified barbed wire fences. Like Auschwitz I, it was patrolled by SS guards, including, after 1942, SS dog handlers. The camp included sections for women, men, a family camp for Roma, gypsies deported from Germany, Austria, and the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and a family camp for Jewish families deported from the Theresienstadt ghetto. Auschwitz-Birkenau was also a killing center and played a central role in the German effort to kill the Jews of Europe. Around the beginning of September 1941, the SS at Auschwitz I conducted the first tests of Zyklon B as a mass murder agent, using Soviet POWs and debilitated Polish prisoners as victims. The, quote, success of these experiments led to the construction of a chamber in the crematorium of Auschwitz I that, like the subsequent gas chambers at Auschwitz, used Zyklon B to murder victims. The first transports of Jewish men, women, and children sent to Auschwitz as part of the final solution were murdered in this gas chamber, Crematorium 1, in February and March 1942. During the first half of 1942, the Auschwitz SS moved the gassing operations to Auschwitz-Birkenau by converting 2 farmhouses just outside the camp's fence into gas chambers. Bunker 1 began operating in spring 1942, the larger Bunker 2 in midsummer 1942. These gassing facilities soon proved inadequate for the task of murdering the large numbers of Jewish deportees being sent to Auschwitz. Between March and June 1943, 4 large crematoria were built within Auschwitz-Birkenau, each with a gas chamber, a disrobing area, and crematory ovens. Gassing ceased at Bunkers 1 and 2 when crematoria 2 through 5 began operating, although Bunker 2 was put back into operation during the deportation of Hungary's Jews in 1944. Gassing of newly arrived transports ceased at Auschwitz by early November 1944. Jewish deportees arriving at Auschwitz-Birkenau immediately underwent selection. The SS staff chose some of the able-bodied for forced labor and sent the rest directly to the gas chambers, which were disguised as shower installations to mislead the victims. The belongings of all deportees were confiscated and sorted in the Canada warehouse for shipment back to Germany. Canada symbolized wealth to the prisoners. The prisoner revolt at Auschwitz. On October 7, 1944, several hundred prisoners assigned to Crematorium 4 at Auschwitz-Birkenau rebelled after learning that they were going to be killed. During the uprising, the prisoners killed 3 guards and blew up the crematorium and adjacent gas chamber. The prisoners used explosives smuggled into the camp by Jewish women who had been assigned to forced labor in a nearby armaments factory. The Germans crushed the revolt and killed almost all of the prisoners involved in the rebellion. The Jewish women who had smuggled the explosives into the camp were publicly hanged in early January 1945. The Auschwitz SS stopped gassing newly arrived prisoners by early November 1944. On orders from Himmler, camp officials began dismantling the crematoria. The SS destroyed the remaining gassing installations as Soviet forces approached in January 1945. Evacuation of Auschwitz and its subcamps. In mid-January 1945, as Soviet forces approached the Auschwitz concentration camp complex, the SS began evacuating Auschwitz and its subcamps. SS units forced nearly 60,000 prisoners to march west from the Auschwitz camp system. Thousands had been killed in the camps in the days before these death marches began. SS guards shot anyone who fell behind or could not continue. Prisoners also suffered from the cold weather, starvation, and exposure on these marches. At least 3,000 prisoners died en route to Gliwice alone. Possibly as many as 15,000 prisoners died during the evacuation marches from Auschwitz and the subcamps. In late January 1945, SS and police officials forced 4,000 prisoners to evacuate Blechhammer on foot. Blechhammer was a subcamp of Auschwitz-Monowitz. The SS murdered about 800 prisoners during the march to the Gross-Rosen concentration camp. SS officials also killed as many as 200 prisoners left behind in Blechhammer as a result of illness or unsuccessful attempt to hide. After a brief delay, the SS transported around 3,000 Blechhammer prisoners from Gross-Rosen to the Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany. The liberation of Auschwitz. On January 27, 1945, the Soviet army entered Auschwitz-Birkenau and Monowitz and liberated more than 6,000 prisoners, most of whom were ill and dying. Question 1 has been answered as an example. The question is, what does the construction and implementation of a death camp like Auschwitz say about the Nazi government? The construction of a death camp like Auschwitz shows that the Nazi government would stop at nothing to achieve its goal of genocide. This is one of the most horrifying examples of human atrocity in history. To me, it exemplifies the evil nature of the Nazi regime.